Today concludes our series of sermons on the theme Back to School. If you missed any of the sermons, I would invite you to catch them online where we have the sermon archives off our webpage. I think it's appropriate, since it's been back to school, and school can be the school of life as well, to end the series with these teachings from Professor Jesus. Let us hear these words taken from Luke's version of the Sermon on the Mount.
But I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you, and if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful.
I'm going to be talking today about how to confront or deal with being bullied. And I need to start with a disclaimer that I'm drawing a distinction between bullying and being in an abusive ongoing relationship. For that, that's a different set of strategies. For that, resources are available, including our church. But again, I'm talking about that which we encounter in school and beyond school, being bullied. And my first experience with that was when I was in the 7th grade. In cafeteria, I was enjoying my very nutritious lunch of barbecued Fritos and a vanilla shake. Just enjoying that when this 8th grade big guy comes up to my table and says, "Kid, you've been throwing rocks at my sister," which I did not do. "I'm going to teach you a lesson. You meet me after school behind the cafeteria, and I'm going to," let's say he was going to do something to my backside, okay? Well, I did not finish my Fritos. I was petrified, Being bullied. It's actually said, according to one study, believe it or not, that 160,000 students per day do not attend school because of the fear of being bullied. It's said that 28% of all students, and probably it's higher than that, 28% of all students will be bullied between the 6th or the 12th grades, especially in mid-high, because that's when children are starting to become young adults, and that's just when it happens. Even more phenomenal to me is the statistic that 1 in 10 students will drop out of school because of persistent bullying. And we know that bullying isn't just the type that I'm talking about with physical bullying, although that is part of it. You can have a picture like that, but it can also take the form of verbal bullying. It can take the form of gossip. It can take the form, obviously, of social media, as we have seen, unfortunately, in recent times. So, how do you deal with being bullied? I consulted the great fount of information, the internet, and I Googled, how do you deal with being bullied? And I came up with all sorts of sites that listed great advice, such as WikiHow, that gives you advice like avoid them, talk to someone, stand up for someone who's being bullied. Good advice. There was Kids Health that gave these pieces of advice. Now, I have to say, when the last one, take charge of your life, I don't know how that confronts a bully, but there it is. And Huffington Post gives you these good pieces of advice. Unfortunately, when I went to junior high, I did not have a smartphone, nor was the internet even thought of. So I had to struggle with what to do. And for that afternoon, I sweated bullets, dreading 3 o'clock when the dismissal bell was. And I went through my mind, what do I do? What do I do? Well, came up with this, which is that if I did not stay and take my beating, then forever I would have this big bully's bullseye on my front, you know? So I figured I had to get it over with now. Now, actually, that summer before this happened, I guess sensing that a scrawny redheaded kid would be a good target for bullies, I got a mail order book on karate. So there on the farm by myself, I studied the stances, the blocks, the kicks, the punches, and all of that for such an occasion. Unfortunately, I had nobody to practice with. My practice was going to happen that afternoon. So, time came, 3 o'clock rang, and I, with the energy of a man going to his firing squad, went to the back of the cafeteria, accompanied by my good friend Marty Henson, who said he would take my battered corpse home. Actually, he did say something like that, but I guess it was a pep talk. So I just waited, and the 8th grade bully comes out, along with some of his friends. He sees me, and he approaches. And as he approaches, I assume stance number 15, found on page 34. All 110 pounds of me assumed this stance. You know, I wonder, looking back on that even though you didn't see that, did you? There, that was the stance. And I wonder, looking back on that, I consulted all of the pages of that karate book, but I didn't consult another manual. And you heard some readings from that manual today from Jesus, because he gave a different way to approach an 8th grade kid who is going to beat your backside after school. Jesus, who was bullied all of his life, well, all of his ministry, he really was, if you look at it, from the beginning to the end of his ministry, he was bullied. And he said this, he said, love your bully, I paraphrase a little bit, do good to bullies who hate you, bless bullies who curse you, pray for bullies who abuse you. If a bully strikes you on the cheek, offer the other. And from a bully who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Now, had I been able to do that, think about it. Had I been able to do that, I would have beat the bully. Really, because, you know, when you're called out to say, kid, meet me and I'm going to take care of you, you are playing into the bully's hands if you actually do that, if you exchange blow for blow. The bully expects you, A, to fight and then he or she will win, or flee and he or she will win. But when you have the courage to show up, but then to say, I am a Christian and I will not fight you, then you are calling on a higher power that the bully doesn't know quite what to do with, right? That's what happens. That unleashes a power greater than your own. Gandhi showed that as he unleashed that power of nonviolent confrontation against the British Empire, and he won. Dr. King showed that as he released the power of nonviolent confrontation against hateful racists. And ultimately, the civil rights movement, which is still going on, won during that time. And so it is a sense that, even as Jesus said, that as you show that type of power, you are tapping the power of God. as revealed in this. Love your bullies, do good, your reward will be great, for God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. So be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Jesus' advice is, you be like God and see what happens. Because that's the way God does to us as we bully God, and we do bully God, but that's another sermon for another time. You know what I mean? Now, I just preached this sermon to you, and I have never in my life practiced it. And I admit it, because to me, the last thing I ever want to do to that kid who's going to beat me up is to say, well, go ahead and hit. That's the last thing in the world I would ever do, because I have self-preservation, and I want to meet force with force. It is natural. It is just the way it's ingrained within our DNA. So what I'm about to say comes not from experience, but from my reflection. And my reflection is this: if you or if I would ever, with our bullies, and we know that bullying can take place in school, it can take place in relationships, it can take place in the office, it can take place in politics, it can take place in any organization you're in, even church. If you ever had the grace and the power and the courage to really put into action what you see on the screen, I have to think that deep down you would start feeling a little better about yourself. Deep down you would start experiencing what happens when you really do put faith into action and rely on that higher power. Jesus sort of got into that in the passage, in some verses right before the passage that you heard Larry read to you. In the Message translation, those words are, count yourself blessed, happy, every time a bully cuts you down or throws you out, every time who gossips about you or blackens your name to discredit me. What it means is the truth is too close to comfort. Jesus is saying, good for you, be happy, because you're making that bully feel uncomfortable. You can be glad when it happens, for even though they don't like it, I do, and all of heaven applauds when you take the higher road and dare love your bully. I guess you could say that you feel that type of peace, that companionship of the Holy Spirit, of the Spirit that applauds in heaven for you. Maybe you feel the same way that Dr. King felt as he was in a Birmingham jail, or as Gandhi felt as he was on a hunger strike. It might be transformative for you. It might even be transformative for the bully. You know that? A guy named John talked about when he was in high school being bullied by the high school bully. And that his locker was right next to this kid, and this kid would always bang his locker shut on the mornings and say something abusive. And every time John screwed up his courage, and he would say, well, good morning, have a good day. After a couple of weeks of that, the bully went crazy. Why do you always greet me like you do? Don't you know I hate your guts? To which John replied, from the first time I saw you, I knew we were going to be best friends. I'm just waiting for you to come around. True story. And he did. And 40 years later, they have remained best friends. But even if they don't become your friend, and if they don't come around, there is a truth that goes well beyond Jesus' words even. And that's this truth as embodied in the advice that a grandmother gave her 7th grade grandson who was being bullied by an 8th grader. She said, remember, good deeds beget good results. Bad deeds beget evil results. Always remember that. And that 7th grader kept on trying to be good, did not exchange blow for blow. Eventually what happened as he concluded the story, you know what happened, he said? The 8th grade bully met the 9th grade bully. And that's the way it goes. To paraphrase Jesus, the bully who lives by bullying will be bullied himself or herself. For violence begets violence, insult, and oppression. And what happened to my 8th grade bully? Here I am, having assumed fearful stance number 15 on page 34, and he looks at me and he says, "Kid, I don't have time to fight you today. I have to go to choir practice at the Baptist church." I couldn't make that up. We had odd bullies in Poplar Bluff, come to think of it. But you meet me back here tomorrow after school, and I'll teach you a lesson. And here I am, without even thinking about it, I looked at him and I said, I looked at him and I said, "You're the one who wanted to fight. I'm here. Let's do it." This is when you applaud. And he said, "No, I don't have time. I'll see you tomorrow." So with that, he turns around and his toadies follow him out. The next day in the stairwell, he meets me and says, "Hey, we don't really have to fight after all, okay? No, we'll just forget about it." And I was relieved. And I have to look back to this story, and I feel pretty proud of myself, you know? I stood up to the bully and he backed down. But I have to confess, I could have handled that better. And I would have been more proud of myself had I really heeded the words of someone who knew something about relying on a higher power. And had I been able to say, without assuming that stance, "I am a Christian. I am sorry if I offended your sister. I did not mean to. But I will not fight you. You can hit me, and I will get back up, and you can hit me again. But I follow the way of Jesus Christ." Who knows what would have happened? Since he's a member of a choir, we know he was virtuous. So maybe we would have become friends. I don't know. Point is, you never do know what's going to happen. What you can count on is a sleepless night, sweating until the school bell rings at 3 o'clock, and really worrying. And when those times happen, may you and I have the grace and the courage to take to heart what Jesus said, for he knew what he was talking about. After all, he's the one who, even at the very end, knew how to win, because at the very end, he's the one who said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." He is our teacher.